Welcome to a podcast interview that we're doing today with Nanak Naam, and for those of you who've been following the channel for quite a while, you'll know that there's a lot of videos that we've created where we're touching on different subjects, and through the exploration of Gurmat and Sikh spirituality, we talk about certain ideas and certain concepts that are to do with mental health. And one of the key focuses of Nanak Naam is that we want to actually try and bring out more information about some of the mental health problems and issues that you've told us that you're facing, and that is a real issue for a lot of people. And today, in today's podcast, we're going to be talking about depression. And depression is a very serious subject and a very sensitive subject, and it's one that we've heard time and time again from lots of different people saying we want to know more about this subject, we want to understand it, and then what does Gurbani and Sikhi and spirituality have to offer within the whole conversation around depression. And today we are going to be joined by a guest who's going to be sharing her own journey and battle with depression, and I'd like to introduce to you Gurpreet Kaur. And Gurpreet came to us through Nanak Naam, and I personally met Gurpreet when you contacted us, telling us about how Nanak Naam videos have impacted your life and how you've had your own journey. So welcome to
Thank you.
Nanak Naam interview. In a nutshell, can you tell us about yourself and your experience with depression?
I was diagnosed with depression aged 18, and I started taking antidepressants at 18. I was on them for 15 and a half years, and I think I was just sick of taking pills, and I got to the point where I kind of went back to my doctor and said, I don't feel good, I still don't feel good. And he said, we'll change your antidepressant. And I just said, I don't want to do that. I was sick of taking pills, and so I went on this journey of I needed to figure it out.
So how long were you on antidepressants for?
15 and a half years.
15 and a half years. And then at one point you were able to get off it. I mean, for a lot of people, depression is a term that they would have heard of, but they don't necessarily know what it means. So sometimes we hear a lot from a very clinical or a medical definition of depression. From your personal experience, how would you describe what depression is? What is the feeling of depression, if it's possible to summarize that in a few words?
For me, it was like walking around with a dark cloud hanging over my head. Not only that, it felt like it was dark inside. So I was grey on the inside as well as outside. I couldn't see anything that was good about what was around. And it's probably one of the most debilitating illnesses that's around, because there's no physical kind of something to fix. It's here and it's in your heart. So you you're stuck with this feeling, and you feel like there's no way out, and it every day just seems to bring you down some more. And there's always almost like a catalyst every day that kind of lets you identify with your depression a little bit more, and allows you to say, yeah, this is another reason for why I'm depressed. And so it's like you have a checklist pretty much every day. You
start to accept that sort of definition of yourself.
Yeah, 100%. So you kind of go through your time. Like for those 15 and a half years, I must have said I was depressed every single day about 10 times.
To yourself?
And to other people. Okay. So anyone that I might have met, or how are you doing, or how are you feeling now? Oh, I'm still really depressed. I'm still really sad. And that was kind of, and I smile about it now, because obviously we know my journey, but as I was saying to you, I can't even believe that I'm the same person. It was, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how did it all start? Did you have quite a normal childhood?
Yeah, I did. I mean, my parents were really hardworking parents, like a lot of our parents were, and they spent an awful lot of time at work doing everything they could to make sure that everything was good at home. But you go to school and you're trying to fit in, conform, there's societal pressures. And there's community pressures almost as well.
Did you say that? Do you think you would have felt that from quite a young age?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's not unique to just me. I think talking to anyone of our generation, they kind of felt the same, because our parents had a really tough time of it. And so that kind of, they weren't able to kind of make sure that everything was okay with you 100%, because they were doing everything that they knew how to do.
Yeah. But along with that came their expectation on you, because they were so busy trying to provide for you, that came with some expectations of what you were expected to do in return.
Yeah. And
like, what kind of things? Can you give us some examples?
Well, one of the catalyst for me with the depression was I had gotten engaged, and I was going to call my engagement off.
Were you quite young when that happened?
Yeah, I was 18.
You were 18 when you got engaged?
And
I presume it was something that was arranged by the family?
And I was perfectly happy. Everything was fine until I wasn't, okay? And I know that that's when the shift happened, where I was like, I'm going to let down so many people.
When you decided that you weren't happy to go ahead with a wedding?
Yeah, and I'm going to let down so many people. Now what do I do? Where do I go from here? And it just became, I have nothing to offer, nothing to give anyone, and no one's going to want me after this, almost. And
right. So you started putting pressure on yourself, which is, how do I call this marriage off and deal with the consequences of that? And that's at 18 years old. That's a lot of pressure to put on a young person, right? Young child, really.
And again, I'm not sitting here and saying, they shouldn't have done that, because our families do what they know, and you can only do as much as you know until you know better. And it was one of the hardest times, I think, that I'd ever been through, and I wouldn't actually change anything that happened in my life because of where I'm at right now. But that moment there where you think, I've got nothing to offer anyone, I'm not going to go through with this marriage, and no one's going to want me after this, like, what do I do? And it just became an internalized kind of darkness. So you called the wedding off, and then you went into your own sort of... Yeah, I'd already started to become depressed, like when I knew that I wasn't going to go through with the wedding. In my head, I knew that it wasn't right for me, and I think we know what's right for us and what isn't. How
would you describe that? So to me, how do you distinguish between that and just the anxiety of going through a little bit of difficulty in your life? How do you categorically say that actually depression had started at that point? What was the experiences that means that you can call it depression?
I literally went from being an okay kid with some semblance of a future for myself and where I might go, to I have nothing to offer anyone.
You just at some point lost all hope of everything.
Yeah, because then it wasn't like just my parents or the family. You actually started to hear people talk and say, do you know what, Hon, if you don't get married here, where are you going to get married? Who's going to want to marry you after this? So at 18, you're thinking, my life is really over, isn't it?
Okay, it was that pressure that was...
So now I'm not going to get married. My family, my poor family, are
going to have to deal with this.
And so you start taking it all, and you start thinking, now I don't know what to do.
How did that manifest into depression? What was the changes in your life that then started happening as a result of this? My
parents would, if they went to sleep at 9:30, 10 o'clock, they'd wake up and find me walking around the garden at 6 o'clock in the morning, because I just couldn't calm myself. There was nothing I could do. I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating, I was so unhappy. It was probably one of, looking back on it, I can't relate to that person because of where I'm at today, but I know that person very well, and I can remember her being just so sad.
At the time when that was happening, could you rationalize it in your head, like why you were feeling this way? Could it be like, well, it's because of the wedding? Or at one point, did it just become a reality for you? This is who I am.
Started as, so yeah, exactly that. So it started as I'm not going through my marriage. And after that, it became, so I'm sad. And then I just became sad. And
it just became a reality of who you were.
It became who I, because if you start, it's like with anything, if you focus on it long enough, it becomes your reality. And it became my reality. That cloud, that switch that happened, it was instant, and it was, I was depressed. I was depressed.
So presumably that stayed for a number of years, because you were saying that you'd been on antidepressants for 15 years. So I'm thinking now 2 years, 3 years, 4 years after that event had happened, it's now no longer anything to do with that event. You've moved on. You've seen that life hasn't necessarily worked out the way that you'd planned. Are you still living in that past event, or is now depression just something independent of that original event?
It becomes the reason for why I'm depressed, and now everything else that's come along with it is my almost excuse, my reason for being depressed. So this didn't work out for me, so that's another reason I'm depressed. So
you're now adding to other reasons. So now, because the past is gone, you just need more things to confirm.
Because I'm sad, so I must be sad for a reason. Oh yeah, this is a reason I'm sad. This is another reason I'm sad. It could have been anything. I failed my driving test. I'm so sad now. It's because I'm useless.
Okay.
So everything becomes about your inability to function as a human being. Like, you see normal functioning human beings. You know yourself in your head, I'm not a normal functioning human being, because I go to sleep crying. I wake up crying. When I'm brushing my teeth, I'm crying. When I'm in the loo, I'm crying. So all of these things, but you're crying in the places where you're alone, because no one's going to quite understand what's wrong. And if you did talk to people about it, they would say, what have you got to be sad about? We called your wedding off. So now get on with it. Now get on with your life. But you actually have no... Once you're in it, unless you know how to get out of it, you're in it. And you're in it. You're drowning in sadness. You're drowning in sadness. That's what it feels like. Like, literally from your gut all the way up to your head, you just feel like you're drowning in this pool of sadness.
Now, I know from the conversations that we had that at some point your life does change, and you actually met your current husband.
Yeah.
You got married, but you've told me also that the depression continued for a long time.
It did.
Talk to me a little bit about how does that happen?
So by that point, my depression had become a part of my personality. I say my depression, I don't even like associating with it like that anymore, but the depression had become a part of my personality. And as my husband often says, like, I didn't see your depression, I didn't see your sadness, I just saw you.
Because it was so intrinsic to you.
Yeah. But for me, he saw something in me that I could no longer see in myself. So essentially, I'm still the same person. I'm still the very same person, but I was just buried under depression at that point.
But that's who your husband knew you as. You were just, that's just how you were.
Yeah. And do you know what? She gets sad. And so it was, we went through a few circumstances ourselves, and I wound up having to have a hysterectomy, and there become more reasons for you to be sad. And I think the year following my hysterectomy was probably one of the worst years, but it was a catalyst to me saying no more, I don't want to do this anymore. But the period that, like, my husband would come home and I wouldn't want to get out of bed, I wouldn't want to do anything. I did that for weeks and weeks at a time.
So say that again. You stayed in bed for weeks?
Yeah, at a time. And
without getting up and going to work, or without having any feeling that you wanted to do anything?
No, nothing. And here's the thing. You're there and you want to get up, you want to go out and get a job, but you're so sad. Who's going to hire you? You can't keep your head together for 5 minutes. And so it's one of the most debilitating illnesses there is. But it's one of the hardest things to deal with because there's no physical element to it that you can see. You can see the physical kind of repercussions of it. But there's no physical ailment, there's no physical anything to tell you this person's depressed. So when they talk now about high functioning depressives and things like that, yeah, there's a lot of us that did that for a really long time, tried to carry on as normal, and then would come home and the pressure of trying to stay normal all day would just bury you by the time you get home.
It gets to you.
Yeah, and you're shattered by the time you've spent this whole day with this facade of who you are, completely faking it. Then come home,
putting a persona out to the outside world.
Yep. And you come home and you're a mess. You're a mess. And there were many times where I can remember vividly just collapsing to my knees with my husband and just crying, and not being able to say why. I'm really sad. And him being him would just put his arm around me and say, "Don't worry, I've got you. We'll get through this." But you don't believe that. You don't know that that's true.
You don't believe that there is a way out of this. You just think this is who you are.
This is how I've been for the last 10 years. Why do you think I'm going to change? Why do you think this is going to change? And it's a... Someone knows a little bit. So it just... Yeah, it's a very taxing illness.
Tell me a little bit about what is the lowest point. What were the lowest points of your depression? What did it lead you to do? So you've talked about how you were sad, you came home crying, you'd stay in bed for weeks on end. Did it get any worse than that?
Yeah, it did. I'd been self-harming since I was 18 in some way, shape or form.
Can you give some examples if you don't mind sharing them?
I would, well, one of the first things I did was actually... I'd taken an awful lot of pills and I overdosed. And thankfully I got past that, and my family got me through that. And I would then... The reason self-harm helped was because I had a physical pain that I could relate to.
So you were trying to create physical pain. So one of them was to use pills to... Well, surely that wouldn't be to do with pain. What were you...
I was self-harming, so I was drinking cupfuls of bleach every now and again. Or...
You were drinking bleach?
Mm-hmm. So I was doing things like that, and there...
Was that with the thought that every time you were doing it, you were trying to end your suffering?
No, it was... I wanted to feel something physical that I could say, I feel pain, and I could relate to that pain. Whereas I could feel sad, but I couldn't explain to anyone why I felt sad. Whereas there were times where my husband would come home and I would be in pain on the couch, and what did you do? What have you done? And it was, I could then cry about the fact that I was in pain versus cry about the fact that I'm sad.
So it
but
gave it something tangible, because the experience of depression
physical.
was just such a numbing experience that you actually needed something to say, this is what it is. At least I could point my finger at something. Because
you can't explain. No one will get it. No one will understand depression unless you've been there. You have the palpable experience of it.
Was there ever a time where you thought that this is enough and I want to just end it all?
Mm-hmm. Pretty much every day. Depression is one of those things that you have to fight to stay alive for a life that you don't want.
Wow.
You have to fight the urge to end things because you shouldn't kill yourself. You're not allowed to...
It's a mental sort of battle that you're going through.
And
but you wanted to?
The customary and societal things as well. If you commit suicide, what's going to happen to you in the afterlife, and so on and so forth. So then
really?
You start
so that was a
all
concern.
Of those things as well. All of those things. But there come points where, for me especially, feeling physical pain was a lot easier to deal with than what I was feeling. So it almost helped me avoid the depression part of it and just focus on the pain, a physical pain, because I dealt with that for a really long time. Depression was just a part of who I was. I know that feeling really well. I can go back to that, but let me feel the pain for a little while. So thinking about the pain was almost a pleasure. The pain was almost a way to get away from what it was that I was feeling. And again, a lot of this stuff you can't explain to people because not everyone gets it. It's not something that is understood, especially by our culture. What have you got to be sad about? You've got a good husband, you live in a nice house, you've got a good car. Yeah, but I've got a horrible mind and I've got a horrible heart. And you can't get past
You've got
it.
enough excuses to tell yourself the
why
otherwise.
I am what I am at.
So you tried self-harming, you tried to commit suicide a few times. What conventional methods did you try? You've talked to us about the pills. Tell us a little bit about, I assume these are antidepressant pills.
They were, yeah, antidepressants. So here's one of the reasons why I stopped taking pills was because the antidepressants led to different side effects. Do you know the pamphlet that comes along with pharmaceuticals? Read it. There's the best advice I can give you to want to change your life. Read the pamphlet that comes along with your antidepressants. I now understand also that having suicidal thoughts was an actual side effect of the antidepressants. So
do they make you more depressed?
Yeah, I reckon they do. Because if one of the side effects is that you may consider suicide, but we're openly being given these pills, and you're not concerning yourself with the side effects, I never read a pamphlet. I just wanted the pills to make me feel better.
And did they make you feel better when you took the pills? Because you were saying that you, at one point, I remember you telling me that you were taking something like 9 pills.
9 pills a day.
A day.
By the time I finished, because I'd had many surgeries as well over the past, it was a 9-year period, I think. And I'd had surgery after surgery after surgery for different complications. And every single pill that I was taking was to combat a side effect from the previous pill that I was put on. So those original pills were still a part of my regime, only I had to take a number of counteracting pills to balance out the effects of the original pills.
Wow.
So there were pain medications, there was antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds. It was quite a concoction.
What were some of the other methods that you had tried apart from taking antidepressants?
The usual NHS route of CBT.
Which is what?
Cognitive behavioural therapy. I'd done that for some time, and you can ask me what CBT was about, and I can still say to you I have no idea, because there are two reasons. I didn't understand it enough at the time. I was in one of the darkest places I've ever been, and all I could think about was, I really don't care that you think that this might help, because it's not helping. I can't get past this where I'm at. I know all of this. I've read the book you told me to read on self-esteem and self-confidence and all of those, but I still feel sad. So this is something inside. I'd done it. The therapy, psychotherapy, even paid to see private counsellors, but I couldn't get past it. I couldn't get past it. And I think that was a part of the reason why it was such a battle, because every day you're trying to function as normal. So I'd gotten jobs in between as well. And going to these jobs was never a good idea. Never a good idea, because you go and you're trying to be something you're not, and you're inevitably making mistakes. And then you're getting told off for your mistakes.
And that's adding to your
depression. So the whole thing is just like, it's a perpetual cycle.
So how did it eventually stop? How does that years and years and almost a decade or more worth of depression start
Over
to turn
a
around?
decade.
And why did it turn around?
October 2015, I made the decision that I didn't want to take anymore, because at the beginning of that summer, I'd actually gone in to see my doctor and say that the pills aren't working. I'm still sad. And he said, let's put you on something else. And I said, no, I don't think so, not now.
So he wanted to give you something else.
That was the answer every time you said that your antidepressant wasn't working. Or if you were saying that I was still sad, their answer was, let's change your antidepressants or change your dosage.
So there's a slightly different chemical.
Yeah, let's try something else. Let's try in a different part of your brain. And so you're taking these pills and they're doing nothing for you. Absolutely nothing.
Was there an option for you to, during your years of depression, to have clarity in your mind saying, actually these pills aren't doing anything?
No, because...
Like, why am I taking them?
No, because by the time you start taking antidepressants, you're depressed anyway. It's part of your psyche. Now, don't get me wrong, antidepressants work for a lot of people, and they did work for me for small things, I think. You know, maybe the intensity of depression wasn't so bad in the morning. Maybe the intensity of depression wasn't so bad in the evening that meant that I could sleep for 5 or 6 hours without getting up and feeling sad or whatever. But you're taking these pills, and you can actually sit and have a conversation with someone, and they're talking to you and you have no idea what they're saying. You're just looking right through them. You're just trying to stay up. You're trying to keep yourself upright. The entire time, you're trying to just keep yourself upright. You feel like a zombie inside. I imagine it's like drinking too much. You know, feeling that way. When his option was, let's give you another pill, I knew that I didn't want to do that. But I was going to America for summer. So I thought, I'll see when I come back. We'll talk about it when I come back. We'll change the pills when I come back. I don't want to do a regime change. That's what I said to him. I don't want to do a regime change before I go to America, because I know there's an embedding process as well. When you switch pills, you actually go through another period of sometimes of a deeper depression before you start feeling better, till those pills kick in.
Wow.
So I didn't want my summer to be taken up by a regime
Trying something
change of pills.
new.
I wanted to enjoy myself for what I was going to do. And I went out and I spent some incredible time with some incredible people. They helped me find in me what it was that my husband found in me. Does that make sense? So it wasn't, I was no longer thinking my husband's only telling me the things I need to hear because he thinks I need to feel better. The kind of things that people were saying it just gave me a whole different outlook. And a lot of these people I'd only just met. So they saw in me someone that I didn't relate to anymore.
So part of your turnaround was actually taking yourself out of that everyday situation of being at home in the same environments and being surrounded by, I assume, all the triggers that reinforced your own depression, actually moving away from that.
And I'm so fortunate that I have a husband that said, you know what, go do it. This is an incredible opportunity, just go. And by that time I'd learned to manage my depression pretty well. I had some really good jobs up until that point. I was very lucky that he said, go do it for you. I never really understood how much that meant to my recovery. And
the support from family. Were you going for recovery, or was it just a change of scenery and a new work opportunity?
A new work opportunity and just a change. And there was a part of me that always wanted to live in America. Don't want to do that anymore. But there was a part of me that really wanted to live in America. So I got the opportunity to do that. And I was very lucky to do that. And while I was out there, I was like, do you know what, this, and I knew that this, the way I felt was inside. It wasn't outside anymore. There was a change in
just the way you felt.
Yeah. So I came back and I was having a conversation with my brother at the point. And I said something to him and he says, you need to find gratitude in your life. You need to find gratitude for the things you have, because what you have, and he was specifically talking about my husband at the point, what you have, people are searching for. And so I immediately rang my husband and said, I think I'm better. I think I'm going to be better. And this was on, and I remember the dates as well, because everything happened so rapidly after that. So this was in the middle of September, and October 1st, I decided that I wasn't going to take them anymore. And I was done. And with that came, I mean, my doctor was saying he wanted me to wean myself off of them. And I, as I said to you earlier on today, everything that we do starts with a decision. And I just made the decision I wasn't going to take them anymore, and I wasn't going to take them anymore, so I did.
Is there something that someone could have said to help you with that decision earlier on, or is it something that you just fell into at some point? Because from what you were saying was that you'd lived with it for so long, there wasn't this idea in your head that you could get out of it. So you weren't trying to solve this problem.
No.
You weren't trying to get yourself out of depression.
No.
But it's almost as though there was just sort of some light bulb moment in your life.
Yeah. And the light bulb moment was, there's got to be more. There's got to be more. So that conversation with my brother changed an awful lot, because he spoke about gratitude and then he spoke about Sikhi. And I'd never understood Sikhi like that before. I'd never felt it.
You'd been brought up with Sikhi, so knowing what the Sikh religion was, but never seeing it in a way to help you.
I felt almost like I wasn't good enough for Sikhi either. So you think like I don't have, God can't love someone like me because of the things that I think, the way I feel, the things that I do, the decisions I've made. And you just, you think that you are your past, you think you're a collection of every single one of your mistakes. And that's all anyone can see, is you're just one big mistake, because that's all you can see is one big mistake. And so when someone actually takes out the time and says, step out yourself for a moment and look from the outside and see what you have. And you start placing things and you start to think, yeah, you're right. Because the switch had begun that summer when I was in America. So, as I said, I started to feel that this change is happening from the inside. So by the time I got back, and that conversation literally was, yeah, I can relate to what you're saying now, because I started to feel that on the inside. So it was the right conversation, but also at the right time for you, that you were in a place in your life where you were receptive. You could receive it. And you can actually say, because as a depressed person, people have an awful lot of advice for you that is no good for you. So going to someone and telling them that they have no reason to be depressed isn't the way to go, because that person, trust me, if they could feel any other way, they would. They
wouldn't want to be in that situation.
Yeah.
You mentioned that at some point Sikhi starts getting introduced back to you.
Mm-hmm.
So how did spirituality or Sikhi help you get out of it, and how does it still help you now?
Sikhi for me, and I've used this term an awful lot, but Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj is the manuscript for life. You will find everything you need and want in those words. What changed for me, the thing that really hit home was actually one of your videos. We've spoken about the Mool Mantra series that you did that led to the Japji Sahib series. But your first video on Ik,
the oneness talk, yeah.
The oneness talk. That for me was enough to say, if I'm one with my source, if the source and I are connected, and it's not a Mr. God up there, it's a Mr. God in here. That was enough for me to say, yes, this is inside, I can change this. And I started to do as much Simran as I could. And it wasn't a lot, 5-10 minutes in the day, whatever. Some mantra, Mool Mantra, and the strength that you get when you're reading Mool Mantra and you're trying to, you understand then that you're one with one, and you're reading Mool Mantra and you're beginning to understand the meanings, and you know that that Mool Mantra is a script of my soul. That Mool Mantra is everything that God is, and if it's everything that God is, it's everything that I am.
Because I'm part of that.
So one of the two lines that I remember without fail, Nirbhav Nirvair. If you don't have fear, you can't have fear if you've got Guru Sahib in your life. You can't have fear if you've got God in your life. That was enough for me to say, I can do this. I don't have to fear this. And don't get me wrong, coming off of those pills in October 2015 led to a nervous breakdown that was, it brought me to my knees.
The process of coming out of...
The process of the pills actually leaving my system. You make questionable decisions, you do questionable things, you say questionable things. And all I can tell you what that felt like from the inside was that I'm screaming all this pain that's coming out. I can't put it into words. It's the same thing that made me depressed in the first place. I couldn't tell you what it was. I could just tell you I was sad. So I was telling you all the reasons why I was sad, and suddenly all this stuff started to come out. But you're screaming on the inside, and you don't go out to be hurtful or any of those things. But it's the process of this stuff has to come out, and it's coming out whether I like it or not.
You talk about how Sikhian spirituality was then something that started to help. So presumably at the wrong time, the same message wouldn't necessarily have got in, have gone into you, and wouldn't have had that impact. So there's an element of life just giving you a second chance, and you sort of having a different view on life, but but also the fact that you took yourself into a new environment, new sangha, a new company, new people. So what do you suggest anyone watching this video right now and who might be thinking about someone in their life who has depression? What do you say to someone who's going through depression? What are the things that can actually help?
To anyone that's going through depression, that there is a release, there is a relief, and there is, I promise you, I can say it with my hand on my heart, that there is a way out. Get educated, learn about your mind, learn about those things. Now, if you know, because here's the thing, when I was depressed, I wasn't going to pick up a book to read it and try and understand, because my reasons for being depressed were too big. It doesn't matter what your book tells me. My reasons for being depressed are way bigger than what your book's going to tell me. To anyone that has a family member that either is suffering from depression or you think may be suffering from depression, my advice to you is to go out and read a book. My advice to you is find out how that person might be feeling and then bring it up with them. Talk to them. They don't want to be talked at, they want to be talked with. They don't want to be talked to, they want to be talked with. They don't want to know all the reasons why they shouldn't be depressed. That's quite common, isn't it? We hear... You don't have to. You don't have a reason to be depressed. Yeah. You've got a roof over your head, you've got a nice husband, you've got a good job, and you just think, yeah, I know all of those things. I mean, I didn't have a reason to be depressed before. I had a good family, I had, all the things that I could want. So those are not useful things that you want to be saying to someone who's got depression, is telling them to snap out of it. It's like telling someone that's overweight, you know what, you need to go on a diet, or don't eat that in front of everyone, or whatever those things. Telling someone that they don't have, we have an element of we know best, therefore I don't feel that way, therefore you shouldn't feel that way, and the reason I don't feel this way is because I do this, this, this and this. But that's not going to work for someone that's depressed if they can't get past why they're depressed in the first place. They can't.
It's too big a thing in their life.
Yeah, it's not just until you've ever experienced it, and it's not an experience that I wish on anyone, but until you've experienced it, you cannot comprehend the conversations that people want you to understand. They don't compute. You don't, because your internal mechanism's so messed up.
What are the right things to say then? Because what would you say to someone with depression?
The first thing to say is, let's talk. Tell me what's wrong. What is it that's making you sad? And then offer the perspective. Offer the perspective. Don't tell them what their perspective should be. And if you don't know what the perspective should be or how you can offer a perspective, read a book on perception, or read a couple of quotes on perception, or read a couple of... There's loads of great literature on perception. You can Google it. There's...
On self-perception and self-image?
Yeah, and all of... Self-image is a huge thing. You cannot outperform your self-image. So a person, for example, an overweight person might go on a diet, and if their image in their head is still an overweight person, they'll gain that 10 pounds back plus more.
Because that's who they've convinced themselves they are.
The image they carry in their head of who they are is the fat person. So when I've been the fat person as well. Like I've done all of those things. So I mean, since the beginning of January, I've lost 2 and a bit stone, and that's simply because my self-image has changed. I'm no longer in my head the fat person that I was, or the unhealthy person, or the sick person that gained all the weight.
Or the same, I suppose, with a person who has convinced themselves for such a long time that they are depressed.
Exactly.
Are we saying then that there's nothing you can say to a person who's convinced they're depressed?
No. For example, if in our own house, in my example, when I was overweight, my husband would bring good, healthy food home for us to eat. And that wasn't his way of saying you're fat or you're overweight. It was his way of saying, you always tell me that you don't feel great. Let's try this stuff now. And that's a really good way of doing it, because he's doing it with me. Does that make sense?
He's joining you on the recovery.
Depression is a very lonely illness. So what the best thing that you can do for someone that's depressed is be there for them and talk to them and let them know. Don't just pay false compliments. They don't need that.
Or just tell them what they should be doing.
Exactly. They need a life that they can see outside of the inside. Another thing actually I'll say about that is, when a person's depressed, be mindful of the things that they're eating, drinking, watching, and the same for a depressed person. If you're depressed, what are you taking in through your senses? What are you eating? All of these things are so super important. And so if you've got a depressed person that's drinking 2 litres of Coke, I can guarantee you that that's just fueling the depression. There's no nutrients in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's understanding that you have a mental faculty that needs a workout the same way your body does.
At one point you briefly mentioned about educate yourself about your thoughts and your mind. Mm-hmm. Can you go a little bit more into that? Like how does a person who's in that state of depression help themselves through that? So you've also mentioned that somebody else can do that for you and start actually to support you, can start educating themselves. Mm-hmm. But for a depressed person, is that a realistic thing for them to do, to go and actually start reading up on it?
100%. If you know what it is that you're trying to combat. So
you've got to go in with the decision that I'm doing this to change.
Yes.
So presumably there's a step before that, which is that you actually have to have made a mental choice or a decision that says, I think I'm now going to do something about it.
Yeah, you have to get to a point where enough's enough. For example, at what point does someone decide to go on a diet? Is it when they no longer fit into their size 16s, their size 18s? So what's your cut-off point? And here's the thing, with depression, you don't know that there's a cut-off point. But I know there is. I know there's a cut-off point. And whether you know that now or not, I'm telling you there is, and you can make that choice.
Are you at the mercy of just receiving that cut-off point? That you just have to wait until you feel like enough's enough? Or is there something that we can do to help people who are in that state to actually say, right, you need to... Because I imagine that's what people are saying, right, you need to snap out of this now. And you're saying, but in some ways that's not helpful.
It's as simple as this. If you want to change your life, you have to change your life. And at the moment, depression became my choice. It became my reason for existence almost. I became so attached to the depression that it became who I was. But it's not who I am at all. So understanding firstly that depression isn't something you are. Depression is something that we've almost conditioned to become by what's going on outside, by what we're taking in, and how we're internalizing any experience of going. We basically take everything personally. Everything. You take every failure that you could have, you take that personally.
Every scenario that happens in life.
It's me. I could have been walking down the street, and if I buckled, I'd tell myself I was stupid because I buckled. So the whole thing became my existence.
It's just self-reinforcing and self-perpetuating all the time.
And self-fulfilling prophecy, that's what that is.
So there's a point where enough becomes enough. We don't know when that point happens, but at some point that happens to you.
You can here's what I'm understanding now, is that you can make the choice. You can make the decision to change it. You can make the decision to change it, because I did. It's then understanding how. Now, I was very fortunate that I have Sikh in my life. I have good tools, good resources. I have a great husband. But what I've understood through it all is that it's not about the outside at all. It's the inside. There's something missing, or I think the way I felt depression was for me was I started to live by my judgments and other people's judgments about me. And so it almost felt like my soul was saying, I can't do any more for you. Like, what? I can't make you happy. Like, you want that and all of the things that you could possibly want. I'm giving you, but you're still not happy. And it just kind of, you just shut down almost under this weight of expectations that you put on yourself and the judgments you put on yourself.
So one of the things I worry about with this whole subject of depression is the impact that it has on someone when they get labeled with depression. Is it useful, or from your experience in your life, was it useful to know that what you were experiencing was called depression, or can it be a hindrance?
It's absolutely a hindrance.
When you get told that you're depressed and then that starts becoming your reality?
It's absolutely a hindrance, and believe it or not, it's a hindrance in lots of different ways. So, for example, the suicide attempt meant that I can't get life insurance. The fact that I was still on antidepressants meant that I couldn't get life insurance. So it has a knock-on effect. So then you start becoming depressed about the fact that your depression means that you can't get the things that you need.
But at one point, if a doctor had just turned around and said to you that oh, you're not depressed. Would that have been useful?
Not at all, because then you go home and you
isn't
say...
it a double-edged sword then? Because we're saying that if you tell someone they're depressed, it has a knock-on effect.
Yeah.
If you tell someone they're not depressed, it also has a negative effect.
And that's the whole thing. Don't tell people what they are. Don't tell people what their depression should be like or how they should feel better. It's about... I have a very unique experience of this, and so everything I can say I've got a license to talk about this stuff because I did it all, and I'm doing it every single day.
So telling people that they are,
or telling them
that they're not, is going to come across to them as not useful. So it's not what you say to them necessarily. It's the fact that you're just trying to talk down to them and say, well, this is right or this is wrong, and that's what becomes.
And the reason you
unhelpful.
are the way you are is because you have depression, or the reason you are the way you are is because you think you have depression but you're not depressed. We've become very good at psychoanalyzing each other and telling each other what you should be doing, shouldn't be doing. And I think that's where the fundamental part of this is, that I understood that this isn't external, this is internal. And it was the decision that I'm going to because here's the thing, if that wasn't going to work for me, I would have just gone back on the pills. I had that in my head at the beginning when I started the process.
Oh, your recovery process?
Yeah. That if it doesn't work, and I had distinct conversations with my husband during that time of the withdrawal and the nervous breakdown, where it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. And I said to him, look, if this gets too hard for you, tell me and I'll just go back. And he was like, we're not going backwards, we're just going to keep on going forwards. And that's the whole thing, keep on going forward. Stop thinking that there's a destination that you need to arrive to, because I've not arrived at any destination at all. I'm just going, and as I'm learning this stuff, I'm teaching it to as many people.
So you're still in that sort of recovery period.
Yeah.
I briefly want to touch on the conversation that you said that you had with your brother during the start of your recovery, and he mentioned gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Can you sort of briefly describe what the benefit of a gratitude-based approach, or gratitude as a way of thinking, why that's an important step in recovery?
And it's not just a recovery. I would recommend a gratitude journal to everybody, because...
And what is that?
So, and it doesn't even need to be a journal, but it's literally thinking about things that you're grateful for. I start my day with a gratitude journal, and I end my day with a gratitude journal, because that your brain chemistry, this is something going on a little bit further, but it's all part of the education process, but your brain waves and the way they're relating to the time of day that it is and what you're doing means that there's certain things that you could do at that time that would actually help your brain waves and help you in turn.
I see that as quite a different approach to what somebody else telling you what you should be grateful for. Because if someone's telling you, well, why are you depressed? Because you've got a good house, you've got this, you've got that. But the point at which you start thinking for yourself, what am I actually thankful for? That's when you're starting to then now no longer fit into the I'm depressed, I'm sad narrative. You're now telling your own story in a different way.
100%.
As opposed to somebody just telling you you're wrong for thinking in this way.
Mm-hmm.
So gratitude isn't the wrong advice that someone else is giving you. It's just the fact that you're now being forced to think for yourself, and you're changing your own brainwave.
You're changing your perception. So you're no longer looking for the things that make you sad. You're actually looking for the things that make you feel grateful. And the more you look for the things that make you feel grateful, you find things to be grateful for.
So you're now looking for them, and that's now changing your thought patterns.
Yeah. And again, it comes down to the education. Your reticular activating system starts up, and you can only see the things then that you're focused on. And my gratitude started off with simple things like, I'm so happy today that I had a lovely warm shower. I'm so happy today that I changed from my pajamas into an outfit for the day. I'm so happy and grateful today that, do you know what, I went for a walk. It was only around what we call the diamond, but It was only around the diamond, but I went for a walk today. And slowly, that 5-minute walk around the diamond became a 15-minute walk up until the next road. And I didn't care who saw me. I was no longer hiding. So it's taking... So this isn't about, if you're depressed, you don't need to be depressed and get over it. And that you can. This is about changing what we're taking in through our senses. And expanding our perception and seeing what we actually, behind what makes us sad, there's something just behind that makes you happy. Wow,
that's beautiful. So I'd like to end with finding out a little bit about where you are in your life now. What are you up to these days? What do you do?
So my journey, from where I was to where I am, a self-harmer, depressed person, to please don't self-harm, let's get you to where you want to get to. My journey became about helping other people, about making sure that no one ever feels this way ever again. And anyone that comes into contact with me, I will do my best to ensure that they never feel like that. And because I started thinking that way, people started to say to me, you should actually do this for a living. You're really good at it.
To help people get out of the same things that you had already been. And that's what you do now?
And that's what I do now. And it's been a remarkable process, because I'm so grateful for the fact that I was depressed. I'm so grateful for the fact that my engagement fell through. I'm so grateful for every single step of the way, because it means that I'm here. It means that I'm having this conversation. It means that I get to meet wonderful people. It means that I get to talk to wonderful people every single day and tell them what's beautiful about them.
So your life now is really dedicated to helping other people getting through this. Would you call that mentoring? What is that?
It is mentoring. I think it's I have nothing against school. I think school's very important to teach the way the world works in a way, but it doesn't teach you how the self works. So what I tell people is that I'm kind of the teacher you wish you had, that told you the stuff that you wish you needed to know at the time you needed to know it. That's kind of what I do.
Yeah. How do people get in touch with you? How do they find out more about your work?
I have a website that's it's actually in the process of being up. I have an email address, and I have you guys can get in touch with me.
Yeah, please share that with us right now. Sure. Let us know how they can contact you.
It's intuitive-knowledge.com, and my email address is hello@intuitive-knowledge.com.
Gurpreet, it's been fantastic to have you here. It's been amazing to listen to your story, and I'm really thankful for you being here today, sharing your story and what's been a very difficult experience for you. And I'm sure it's been a difficult challenge to sort of bring up a lot of those emotions as well. But I know that depression is one of those subjects that is affecting so many people right now, that hopefully by watching this video, people will have some better idea of what it is. Anyone who's going through it may have some glimmer of hope that they can get out of it, and anyone who's worried about someone else in their life
knows that they can help.
Will know that they can help.
And here's the thing, you're not helpless just because someone's depressed, and you're not helpless because you're depressed. And that's the understanding. We can all help each other because we're all one.
That's a beautiful message. So I'm gonna say thank you very much for coming to the show today, spending time with us with Nanak Naam, and I hope that you have had an opportunity to learn something new about a subject. I know I've learned a lot today about what depression is and how debilitating it can be in someone's life. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who continues to watch Nanak Naam videos and continues to support us. I hope you can see the direction that Nanak Naam is trying to go and the kind of work that we're trying to do. So please do continue to watch our videos, share, and more importantly, please do continue to support this as a non-profit charity so that we can continue to bring more great speakers and more great guests and share great wisdom about how mental illness and spirituality can really work and help each other. So thank you everyone, and I look forward to seeing you next time.